Hey guys, it's Lauren. Right off the bat, here are all of my socials and you should go follow them if you don't already. Y'all know usually I don't do like sit down intros for my tutorial videos, so you really need to disregard how I look right now. I'm being serious. I know it's rough, but there are a couple things I wanted to say. So today's video is not only a tutorial on how to build an intro for your edit from scratch, but this video also doubles as a finish my edit contest. So after I'm done with the tutorial and making the intro, there's gonna be a link in the description for you guys to download the intro that I made, along with the rest of the audio so you guys can finish the edit for me. This contest will probably be about a week long. I'll choose the winner next week and they will be announced on my Instagram, TikTok, and one of my future YouTube videos. They're gonna receive a shout out on all my platforms, and I'm also gonna follow them on everything as well. So if you're interested in participating, again, just download the intro I have in the description, finish the edit, use your creativity, and then post it on Instagram or TikTok. Make sure to tag my accounts and then hashtag it laurensummerfme right here on the screen. And then another quick thing I wanted to say, thank you to my friend Ryan, aka Vile Cole on Instagram and YouTube. I was talking to him about how I wanted to film a tutorial on like transitions you can use for an intro or how to make an intro. At first, I was just gonna do like a normal tutorial, so I just show you a bunch of different transitions to do. But Ryan mentioned to me that it might be helpful to actually bring you guys through my thought process from like having a blank timeline to suddenly having an intro. So thank you to Ryan for this idea. You should definitely go follow and subscribe to him. All right, enough said, let's get into the video.
Do, you can't touch, nope, Jay's so flat, I should work at Flight Club.
Alright guys, so the first step to building your intro is going to be choosing your audio. Personally, I like to choose audios that have either something cool going on with the lyrics or the beat that I can kind of just envision in my head as being an edit intro. Actually, a lot of the times when I come up with my edit ideas, it starts while I'm listening to a song, and the build up to the chorus of the song I can just imagine as an amazing intro. And for me, I find that it really helps me just get into the rest of the edit when the audio for the intro has some sort of meaning or something I know could look really good with my flow and my graph style. So for today's tutorial, I'm going to be using a snippet from the song 23 by Miley Cyrus. And it really sucks that I'm going to be talking about audio so much in this video, but I can't actually play the audio for you because of copyright. I'm sorry. So I'm actually going to provide for you guys in the description the exact audio snippet I'm using, because this is going to be important for step 2 of building your intro, which is listening to your audio a million times. So I want you guys to go pause this and check out the description so you can download the audio file I'm using and listen to exactly what I'm listening to. I know a lot of editors relate to this, so I don't think it's going to be weird to say, but I can kind of just envision the edit in my mind and the transitions I'm going to use when I just listen to the song a ton of times. I'm just going to listen to 23, find what parts really stand out to me. Oh, that rhymed unintentionally. Alright guys, I've listened to the song a ton of times, and now step 3 is getting open your notes app. I don't know if I've talked about this on YouTube, but it is vital to plan out your edits. So I kind of like to go by each line of lyrics, and the lyrics will kind of space out like the different chunks of your intro. Now, a little reminder that this notes app method is really just for organization. It doesn't have to be like a very thorough, in detail description of your edit because, quite frankly, you haven't even made the edit yet. So you're bound to have some things that you want to change, some things that you didn't know you were going to do from the get-go. So this really is just a rough draft. So for the line, "You can't touch, nope," the way Miley says like "can't touch" combined with the actual like word touch, the first thing that came to my mind was like a hand PNG kind of slapping across the screen, if that makes sense. It's kind of going to be similar to the green intro. And then another reason I wanted to do this hand idea is because for the word nope, I could also incorporate a hand emoji like just with one finger up and maybe wiggle it a little bit, but there always has to be something going on in the background, and I like to use this as an opportunity to like give a little teaser into who I'm editing. So behind the hand, as it kind of slaps across the screen, I'm gonna have like velocity videos of who I'm editing, which is Ice Spice, just in the background with maybe some panning. And then it is essential that you plan how you're gonna get from one scene or one picture to the next, because after nope, I want the hand to like go off the screen and I want to transition into something else entirely. So you need to kind of solidify how you're going to do that. So I think I'm gonna have the hand do a Y flip and then just slide off the screen. This one's kind of a two-parter, so we have Jay's So Fly and then the I Should Work at Flight Club. I know I really like adding text in my intros in some form. It doesn't have to be the entire intro, but I like to sprinkle it in there. And the reason I'm deciding to do the Jay's So Fly for the text is because I also had a completely opposite idea while I was listening to the audio. Because the songs are about J's, which are Jordan shoes, I definitely wanted to have some sort of color theme because I'm going to include pictures of the shoes. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'm like, I want a color theme, but I don't know what colors to use. Now guys, stay with me for this part. So I decided there's 3 words here, Jay's So Fly. So I can also add 3 Jordan shoes. So I'll use the 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, so that each letter of this phrase right here can be a different color. This will be red, yellow, and blue. And then when I add pictures of the shoes, one will be red, yellow, and blue. But there's a little bit more to this as well. I'm gonna explain it again when I get to the next line of lyrics. I also know that when each individual word comes in, I don't want it to just like blur in or fade in. I want them to kind of pop out a little bit dramatically to match the momentum and like the level of energy of the actual song. And because text can be really simple and I'm not gonna have any photos or videos in the background while I manipulate the text, I know I still need something going on in the background, so I know I'm gonna add some colored flashes. Then I just love to match the lyrics to whatever I'm editing, so I'm probably gonna add some wings behind the text box for fly. And then this last line is still like a work in progress. Again, you don't need to have everything planned out to a T, but I know I want to have the text kind of like fly away in some way. And now for the part I should work at Flight Club. So I already mentioned I want to have 3 Jordan sneakers to match the 3 colors of this text up here, but there are 2 other reasons why I went for 3 sneakers. Number 1, I'm considering the symmetry of the edit. So like in my mind, I can have 1 shoe on the top left, 1 in the middle right, and then 1 on the bottom left. And then another reason why having 3 is helpful is because after the Jordans show up, there are 3 really fast beats following it. And when there's faster beats in an audio, it can get really frustrating, or like you might be really confused on how to proceed, because on one hand, you don't just want to add a ton of flashes and call it a day, but on the other hand, you know you can't add like a ton of keyframes and different pictures without it looking too fast and choppy. So knowing that I have 3 really fast beats at the end, I can actually use the Jordans for these 3 fast beats. And so the idea I had is that the check mark on the side of each shoe pops out and like scales up to the middle of the screen. But then there's one more beat after all of this, and this beat is also pretty fast, and like the actual edit starts right after it. So I decided I can just have the middle check mark pop out even more than the others, and then maybe do a rotation to show a photo of who I'm editing right before I actually start editing them. Alright guys, I want to remind you, it's totally okay if everything I just said sounded like gibberish to you, because now I'm going to show you how to actually do all of this. Alright guys, now it's time to start on the edit. So whenever I'm making an edit and I've already planned it out, I like to keep a folder on my desktop with just all the PNGs and media I know I'll be using. So as you can see, I have the hands and the Jordans, and I've already brought the hands onto my timeline, and all I've done is just pre-compose them together right here, which is the part of the song where she says nope. And then like I also mentioned in my notes, I have like my background clips as this animation is occurring. So I know I want this hand to kind of be slapping across the screen, and that movement is going to be a mid-graph that starts right here and ends right here. I'm going to mark some beats on my timeline just for easier comprehension. Right here is the first slap movement, and here is the second. And before I add my keyframes, I'm just going to recenter the anchor point of the hand, because to achieve that kind of slapping motion I want, I need the hand to pivot down here at the wrist. So I'm going to hold down Y on my keyboard and drag my anchor point right here. Then I'm going to add keyframes for 3 things: position, rotation, and then I'm going to enable 3D and add a keyframe for Y rotation. Then I'm going to drag my time indicator near the end of the clip. I hit U on my keyboard to view my keyframes, and right here I'm going to add keyframes for all of my values again. I'm going to increase the Y rotation past 90, and I'm also going to increase the Z rotation. Of course, easy ease your keyframes. And before I even add graphs to this, I want to make sure the motion makes sense. So I'm just going to scroll through it and see to make sure I'm getting the pattern of motion that I intended for. So this is looking good. So now it's time for the second part of this motion, which is to slap the hand across the screen again so it appears on the right side. So what I'm going to do is add a null object layer and connect the hand to it. I'm gonna enable 3D on this null. And remember, this is the beat marker for our second motion, so I'm gonna start my keyframes right around here. I'm gonna keyframe the Y rotation and Z rotation, of course, and I'm gonna start by manipulating these values, and then I'll see if I have to alter maybe the position or scale. Also, almost forgot to say, make sure to recenter your anchor point again at the wrist for the null object layer. So I'm gonna scroll forward, and right about here, I'm gonna add my second set of keyframes. I'm gonna negatively rotate the Y rotation to bring it in the opposite direction. And I'm realizing now I don't really need to change anything about the Z rotation, but as I suspected, what does need some changing are the position and scale. So I keyframe them as normal right here when the Y rotation is also 0. Then at the end, I'm gonna add more position and scale keyframes. I'm gonna move the hand a little bit more off the screen. And after these changes, I'm also gonna increase the Y a little bit. So now that I have keyframes on the actual clip and the null, I like to save this part kind of for the end, which is just adding all the mid graphs. It's honestly gonna be the same deal for all of these. I just shape my graphs like this, so that the peak of the graph is right where the beat hits. I also forgot to mention this, but I added some opacity keyframes for both of my clips, so that while it's doing this motion, they fade nicely into each other. So I have them fading in from a lighter opacity and going to 100, and then fading out again. So this is what our transition looks like so far. And yeah, this is exactly what I envisioned in my mind, so. All right, now we're gonna work on getting this pointer hand in the middle of the screen and also rotating it a little bit. So I'm gonna add yet again another null object layer, enable 3D on it, and then connect your first null to your second. And before I do any transitions on this null, I'm gonna recenter its anchor point to around right here, so that when I do my Y rotation, it looks nice and natural. I'm gonna add another beat marker on my timeline right here, which is when she says nope. I'm gonna start my keyframes right here, and I'm gonna add one for Y rotation just to start. Then I'll drag it towards the end of the clip, and I'm gonna increase it. From the looks of this, I also know I'm gonna need a position keyframe and a scale keyframe. I'll push those to the beginning, and then add 2 new ones for the end. I'm gonna decrease the scale a bit and move the position up. The reason I'm needing to adjust these is because, as you can tell, the anchor point is not directly on the center, but I actually did that on purpose because it makes the Y rotation kind of look a little bit different and fun. Like, I say this all the time, but when I'm editing, there are things that I do unintentionally that just randomly look good. And a lot of the times, this is having an anchor point that's just a little bit off. I'll use my recent Ice Spice edit as an example. This Y rotation you see right here is the product of an anchor point that was a little bit wonky, but I liked how it looked, so I kept it, and sometimes I intentionally have mine a little bit weird. So I'm gonna add the same mid graph for all of these keyframes. It's the same one I've been doing before, nothing new. And now I'm just gonna play that back. So it was good, but I immediately noticed that these should be spaced out more. So I moved these forward by 3 frames, and I'm also gonna move these back by 3 frames, so that the peak of my graph is still right here at the beat. I've also decided I need to add some Z rotation keyframes to this, just to tilt it a little bit more this way, and I'll also bring the position a little bit up as well. And sometimes I like having keyframes that don't have any mid graphs, because I like to space them out a lot to add some extra flow. So I didn't add a mid graph to these Z rotation keyframes, and this is what that looks like. It's kind of just like really flowy the way it rotates back. So now we gotta go back to the beginning and think, how is this hand gonna come into the screen? I always like to keep this part really basic and simple because it's just gonna fade into something cooler anyway, you get what I mean? So I'm gonna add another null object layer. I'll enable 3D on this and then connect null 5 to null 6. And then we're gonna recenter the anchor point of this null to be on the palm. So I'm gonna keyframe the scale at 100 and the Z rotation at 0. I'm gonna bring these a bit forward and then add keyframes for scale and rotation again. We'll start the scale at 0 and the Z rotation at some big negative values, so like negative 190 something, I guess. Easy use these keyframes. And I'm just gonna re-listen to this part of my audio specifically to see if there's one beat in specific that's best for the hand to pop in at. All right, I found the beat. I'm gonna mark my timeline here. And then I'll just reposition these keyframes to be centered around that beat. Then I'm gonna add mid graphs for both of them. If you time this up perfectly with the audio file in the description, you'll be able to really appreciate how cool this looks. All right, a few more things with the hand before we move on to the text. Even though we have clips coming in, I don't want the background to be so plain in the beginning, so I'm just gonna add some solid layers that fade out with opacity. Since I have that primary colors theme going on, let's start that now. Do these colors go in order? I'm just gonna go with my heart. Red, yellow, blue. Guys, literally had a miracle moment as an editor right now. I just played it back and I literally pushed them to the exact timing of the beats accidentally. Oh my god, I just scared myself. So these are the beats, and here's my simple little opacity method. At the very beginning, I'm gonna add a keyframe. I usually don't keep it fully at 100, it's just too bright, so I'm gonna bring it down to 80. I also like to add CC vignette to my solid layers. I decrease the original 100 to about like 70, just because it adds more depth and contrast. I'm gonna move my time indicator forward to around right here, and bring my opacity to 0. Easy as these keyframes, and usually I would add like a slight speed graph, just something like this, but I played it back, I listened to the audio, and I actually really like how it looks with no graph. It's a little bit longer, but it matches the beats really well. So I'm just gonna copy these keyframes and paste them into my 2 other solid layers. I'm also gonna copy the CC vignette and add that to my other solids. I'm also gonna copy one of these solid layers and paste it right under the beat where it says nope. Then I'm gonna look up tint in effects and presets and add that to this new solid. And I'm just gonna change the solid layer to white. Easy way to get a new flash in a different color. We need to have it leave the screen in some way to go to the next part. I'm gonna add one last null layer, enable 3D and connect the previous null to this null. You can change your active camera view to any of these 3 views if you want a better view for when you're recentering your anchor point. I'm actually a liar. I'm gonna recenter my anchor point actually to the wrist, because I realized I want to use X rotation to do like a falling forward type of effect. For this, I'm also gonna add position keyframes. At the end, I wanna drag it off the screen. And of course, I'm gonna make my mid-graphs. So at the part where Miley says nope, I'm gonna add an effect called wiggle rotation to my hand PNG. I'm first gonna add a keyframe for wiggle amount, and I'm gonna set that to 0. I'm gonna move my time indicator forward and change the amount to 20, and then a few frames later, bring that back to 0. Then I'm gonna change my wiggle speed to around 4. Would you look at that? It mimics a finger wagging. All right, guys, how are we liking our intro so far? It's honestly feeling like a full-fledged edit. All right, now we're gonna get into the text. Like I said earlier, I'm gonna do 3 text box. The first one is just gonna say J's, and I'm gonna put that in red. Let's scale it forward so we can see it more, because we're gonna add some effects. But first, let's just recenter the anchor point to the center. So first text effect that I always add is bevel alpha. I changed the edge thickness to around 8, and it gives this really cool effect. Next, I'm gonna add some drop shadow, make the distance around 15, and I usually don't mess around with the softness for text. Very important effect is CC light sweep. This is what gives it a cool glare. First, I keyframe the center towards the edge. Then I drag it forward a significant amount and bring the center to the other side. And you can mess around with these keyframes later depending on how long your text lasts with the beats. Another effect that's really cool for text is wave warp. Change the wave width to 600, and I like to change the direction to like 45. So this is what that's looking like. So now for my audio, I know I want to use a bounce text effect, which kind of like makes the text bounce and pop in. So toggle down to text, click on animate, and first go to scale and set that to 0. Then go to add property and click on rotation, then change that to +90. Now we're gonna go to add selector, then click on expression, caret down on expression selector, and then caret down on amount. Then we're gonna replace this expression with one that I will provide in the description. It should look something like this. So I'm gonna copy this, erase what's here and paste that, and then just click away. It looks like this, very nice. All right, now I need a mechanism for this text to fade away because I want the first 2 words to fade away as the word fly comes in because it's gonna be like the main attraction. So if you look up text in effects and presets, there's a category called blurs, and it offers some like really cool fade out effects. So I'm gonna use blur and fade out. That looks like this. Obviously, it's really slow now, so I'm just gonna bring the keyframes closer together, and I'm gonna time them properly so that they fade out like right on beat. All right, my beat is right here, and I think I'm gonna add a mid-graph for this text effect. I don't usually do this, but I'm gonna make it very like subtle. All right, the great part about already having this text box is that I can just duplicate it and then use it for the next lyric, which is so. So I'm gonna duplicate that and drag it down. Then I'm just gonna change the words to so. I'm also gonna change the font just for the middle word for some like cool mismatch. Right now I'm using a font called Haydex. I'm gonna change this to Akira Expanded. Then I'm gonna change the color to yellow. And all I have to do is shift it a little bit right on my timeline so that it pops up when the word appears in the song. I'm also gonna retime the blur out keyframes on the second text layer, the so, because I want these two text boxes to fade out at the same time. So I just shifted it and realigned it with these keyframes. So I'm gonna duplicate the J's again and bring that to the top. And this is gonna be the word fly. And I duplicated J's because I want it to go back to the Haydex font. Again, just so there's like mismatch in the middle. I'm gonna replace the words. I'm gonna change the color to blue. And I'm gonna position it even further down because now I'm gonna add the angel wings. I'm going to position them under the text and also add a drop shadow. I'm actually just gonna scale distort it on beat. So I'm gonna have it start really squished out. And then when fly pops up, I'm gonna bring this first scale value back to its original one, which is 91. I'm gonna easy ease and do a mid graph right on the beat. And on the second part of the graph, I'm also gonna do some undershoot so that it kind of gives like a squishy, bouncy effect. And then of course, I'm gonna opacity fade these in. On the fly text box, I'm also gonna remove the blur and fade because we want it to last longer than the other words. All right, so this is what we're working with right now. And now I'm gonna pre-compose all the text and the angel wings together because we're gonna add some mid-graph panning. So first, I'm going to enable 3D on this pre-comp. Then I'm gonna add position keyframes for the first zoom in, which is gonna be on the word J's. So I'm gonna decrease the third position value to bring it forward and then just push it down and onto the center of the composition. I'm gonna mark my beat and add a mid graph. Now I'm gonna add a null object layer, enable 3D on it, and then connect your previous null to this one. Now we're gonna add position keyframes to do the pan to the second word. Again, using the same technique, I'm gonna come even closer and then bring the word so into the center. I'm gonna find my beat, easy ease, and then add a mid graph. Again, I'm gonna add a new null, enable 3D and connect your nulls. And then our last position pan down is gonna be to fly. However, for this one, I'm gonna zoom out so we can actually see the wings. And then again, I'm gonna center it. All right, now I'm gonna go back to our original clip, not the nulls, and I'm gonna add some graphless keyframes for the X and Y rotations. So at the beginning of your pre-comp, add keyframes for X and Y. I'm gonna start both of them at 0. For the X rotation, I'm just gonna drag it towards where the fly comes in, and I'm just gonna decrease it a little bit. Then I'm gonna easy ease this, no graph. Now for the Y keyframes, I'm gonna first drag my time indicator to the point where the word fly is coming in, and I'm gonna increase it. Then I'm gonna drag my time indicator forward a little bit more to where the wings are in view. And now I'm gonna make the Y rotation negative. Then I'm gonna easy ease these keyframes, no graph. All right, after adding these rotation keyframes, I'm also gonna add some position keyframes at the end of this to make the text literally fly away. So I'm just gonna drag the position up and to the right and have her just casually fly off screen. Goodbye, girly. The beat hits right around here and it flies away just like this. All right, a little life hack using what we have from earlier. I'm gonna copy these 3 solids and paste them underneath the hand and the text. And then I'm gonna like rearrange the order. So I'm gonna put blue first, red second, and then yellow last. Then I'm just gonna line it up to match the timing of the text and expand the opacity duration a little bit. And it's literally just as cool as the beginning. I'm also gonna add a light layer, but I'm gonna crop it like right here because I don't want it on this part of the hand. Remember to always just mess around with the spacing of your keyframes until you get what you like. And here's what we have for the text portion. And now we're getting into the last chunk of the tutorial, which is adding the sneakers. Now I've been debating on how I'm gonna do this, and I'm actually gonna do it kind of in the opposite order that the text comes in. So as you can see, we have red, yellow, then blue as it's panning down. So for the sneakers, we're gonna start with blue at the bottom, yellow over here, and then red at the top. And then on the last beat, I'm gonna have all the check marks on the shoes pop out at the same time. The first one will say made, the middle one will say buy, and since this is a finish my edit contest, I'll have a text box that says you. I find it looks really cool when you're able to like intertwine your watermark into what you're actually editing. The sneakers are gonna be placed under this pre-comp that has the text, and I'm just gonna turn the view off on that for now. I have my 3 PNGs here, so I'm gonna drag them in, and underneath the pre-comp, I'm gonna enable motion blur and 3D. And now I'm just gonna figure out my timing and placement. So the blue is gonna come in first and I'm gonna mark that beat. Now I'm marking the beat for the yellow shoe and of course marking it for the red one. If you noticed here, I changed the color of the pre-comp just so I know which clip it is. And that's something that can also be really helpful for when we're doing the sneakers. So to change the color of a composition, you just click right here and change it to whatever you want. So I'm gonna make the blue shoe blue, of course the yellow one yellow, and I'm not gonna make the red shoe red just because I've already preconditioned my mind to see a red layer as a null layer and I don't wanna confuse myself. So I'm just gonna change it to brown. Now, like I said, I'm just gonna reposition them on the screen. I'm gonna add drop shadow to all of these. Gonna make it pretty long because it is a sneaker, and just paste that drop shadow in my other clips. And before we start doing like 3D and null layers, we're gonna do the check mark part. So I just downloaded a PNG of the mark so I don't have to like spend time masking it out the shoe. And we want each one of these sneakers to have its respective check mark. So make sure to enable 3D on the check mark. And this first one I'm gonna do for the blue shoe. So I'm just scaling it down and repositioning it. Then I'm just gonna copy and paste on top of the yellow layer, bring that over here, and I'm gonna rotate it in the right direction. And as you can see for the yellow sneaker, it has a yellow check mark. And since that one is in the middle, I thought it might as well stand out from the rest. So I'm gonna add tint to this check mark, and we're gonna match it up to the actual color of the shoe. I'm also gonna go back and add drop shadow to these marks, just for some extra dimension. And now for the red shoe, I'm gonna copy and paste that same mark and just readjust as I need to. All right, and before we start on the animation, I'm gonna pre-compose our check marks with text boxes that say made by and then you. This is gonna be basically exactly like the text techniques I taught you before. So starting on this shoe, I'm gonna have the text box red, maybe make it a deeper red to match that, turn on 3D, and then I'm just gonna center it on top of that check mark. If it blends in a little bit right now, don't worry about it, because when the check marks pop out, it'll be more distinguished. And I'm gonna add literally the exact same text effects I just showed you about. So we have some drop shadow, some bevel alpha, and some wave warp, but we're not gonna have the text box last the entire duration. I'm gonna crop and opacity fade it in right as that last beat hits and the check marks are popping out. This timing is gonna be exactly the same for all the check marks, so I'm just gonna copy and paste the text box, and then just move it, change what it says, also change the color. Why do I keep getting a mustard yellow? Come on, girl. There we go. And then same spiel for the last check mark. And now what we're gonna do is pre-comp each check mark with its respective text box. So this is gonna be for the red shoe, same deal for the yellow shoe, and the blue shoe. Now what I'm gonna do is give each shoe and its respective check mark its own null object layer. So these two clips right here, this is the blue shoe and the blue check mark. I'm gonna add a null and then connect both of them to the null and enable 3D on it. Same situation for the yellow shoe, add a null, enable 3D and connect it, and then same situation for that red shoe. So considering the arrangement of my shoes on here, within each null, we're gonna need to recenter the anchor point onto the shoe that it is connected to. So this one is the null for the blue shoe. I'm just gonna recenter it here. Same deal for the yellow and the red. And so what I'm gonna do in these nulls is negatively rotate the shoes in kind of opposing directions, just like they're already oppositely arranged. So I'm gonna go to the null for the blue shoe and click R on my keyboard. Think I'm gonna increase the Y rotation. Then for the yellow null, I'm gonna alter the Y rotation, but in the opposing direction to the blue shoe. And then I'm gonna set the direction of the red shoe in the same direction as the blue shoe. All right, now on top of the null object layer for the red shoe, we're gonna add yet another null layer, and this will kind of be like the master null. So these three nulls that we add, they only control one shoe. So we're gonna connect each of these nulls to this new master null, and then of course, enable 3D on the master null. All right, and here's what we're gonna do. Remember when we marked these beats earlier? These are the same beats that our null panning is gonna follow. The effect I'm trying to achieve is to kind of separately zoom in on each of the three shoes as it hits that beat. And then at the end, I'll zoom it out and have the check marks come forward. So on the master null, I'm gonna add keyframes for position, and then for right now, Y rotation. And I'm gonna remark these beats just on my timeline so I can see them. And this is the beat we're trying to hit with this null right here. So for my second position keyframe, I'm gonna zoom it in with the third value, move it to the side, and then rotate it a bit negatively. Now I'm just gonna easy ease and add the same mid graphs that I've been using for the whole video. And then I'm just recentering my keyframes to like the pace of the beat. All right, now we need yet another null, enable 3D and connect the previous one to this one. And now we're trying to hit this beat, which is the pan to the yellow shoe. So I'm gonna add the same keyframes as before for position and Y rotation, and then just literally do the exact same routine as I just did, shifting the position and changing that Y rotation. Easy ease and mid-graph situation. Now same deal, we're gonna add a new null, and now we're trying to hit this third beat up to the red shoe. So I'm gonna add 3D and connect the previous null to this one, add the same types of keyframes, which are position and Y rotation. I'm gonna shape it around my beat hit, and then use position and rotation to bring it to the red shoe. Okay, now we're gonna add another null object layer, enable 3D on it, and connect that last null to this one. On this null, I'm gonna mark the last beat in my audio where the checks are supposed to pop out, and then I need to recalibrate the anchor point of this null to be like right around here, because it needs to be centralized. Then I'm gonna add keyframes for position. I'm gonna zoom this out. I'm also gonna add keyframes for Y rotation, because due to like the mismatch in the alternating directions of the rotations, the red and blue are kind of more in view than the yellow one is, so I'm just gonna positively rotate that a bit. I'm gonna easy ease and mid-graph these. So this is what it's looking like right now. And before I even have the check marks pop out, I need to think of how the sneakers are actually coming into the screen, because right now they're just kind of there. So remember when I marked the beats on each of the actual pictures of the shoes? We're gonna use this beat as a frame of reference when we manipulate the values inside the individual nulls that are connected to the check mark and its respective shoe. So right now I'm working on the blue shoe and I'm gonna use this null. I'm gonna recenter the anchor point of the null so that it's right here, because I want the shoe to kind of rotate in from the side. So I'm gonna add keyframes for Z rotation. At the end, it should be normal at 0, but at the beginning, I'm gonna increase it so that the shoe is off the screen. I'm gonna easy ease it and add a mid-graph that follows this beat right here. And I'm also gonna do a position bounce on this shoe. So like right before the beat hits, I'm gonna add a keyframe for position. Then I'm gonna drag my time indicator 2 frames forward, and I'm gonna increase the second position value to bring it down. Drag your time indicator a couple more frames forward, and from its original value, you now wanna decrease the second position value so it rises up a bit. And then I'm just gonna copy and paste that first keyframe afterwards. It's a pretty quick bounce, but there's a lot of panning, so you won't even really be able to notice it. And this is what that looks like. So for time's sake, I'm gonna repeat this exact same process on my 2 other nulls for the yellow shoe and red shoe. I also recommend opacity fading in the shoes, because as you can tell, it's like still on screen right here, but then as the panning continues, it goes off screen. So I'm just gonna have the opacity be 0 right here, and then fade it in as the camera moves. All right, on to the last one. This is for the red shoe. This is what that's looking like right now. Awesome! All right, remember this is the beat where the check marks pop out. I'm just gonna mark this beat on my timeline as well. So remember, these 3 pre-comps right here are just the check and the text, so we can make them pop out separately from the shoe. I'm gonna start with the check mark for the red shoe. I'm gonna add position keyframes and structure that around my beat hit. And I'm also gonna add keyframes for Y rotation. At the beginning, they should be at their normal values, but at the end, I'm gonna decrease the third position value so that the check mark pops out and then bring it towards here. And then I'm also gonna rotate it so that it's more flat. It's a little bit hard to see right now because I haven't done anything to the background, but we will make adjustments. Now I'll just easy ease and add my mid-graphs, and I'm just gonna repeat this exact same process for the other 2 pre-comps. It's coming together! And again, same situation for the blue mark. To make the check marks more noticeable when they pop out, I'm going to do two things. First, we're gonna add camera lens blur to the shoes in the background. So I'm gonna look up camera lens blur in effects and presets, and I'm just gonna add it to the blue shoe and then copy these keyframes for the other shoes, again, because I want them to blur out at the same time. We want it to start blurring just right before the last beat, so I'm gonna have it start like right here, and change the blur radius to like 40. Easy ease these keyframes, and then I'm just gonna copy and paste them onto the other shoes. It adds some cool dimension. And then the last thing I'm really concerned about is just adding some flashes in the background. Since I already had this series of colored flashes right before, I'm just gonna do 3 white flashes as each shoe comes in. And then the beats kind of sound like strobe lights during this part, so I'm just gonna add some white strobes. If you can recall, I already had a white flash layer, it's this one. So I'm just going to copy and paste that at each beat hit. I'm gonna tone down the opacity also for all of these. So I had it starting at 80% originally, but now I'm gonna do 50. I'm gonna use this same white solid for the strobe sequence right here. And for the strobes, I'm gonna decrease the length of the opacity and then just duplicate that a couple times very close to each other. It's gonna look something like this. So there's 3 strobes, and then the last one should have a higher starting opacity than the rest, so I'm gonna change it from 50 to 70. And then for the transition into the actual edit, I'm just gonna do something super simple. I'm gonna add one last null layer, connect your previous null to this new one, and then enable 3D on the null. And then I'm just gonna use position to bring it forward, so it adds some dimension. I'm actually gonna have this as a mid-graph. So the beat for the beginning of the actual audio is right here, so I'm just going to mark that. Gonna bring this forward even more, and then shape my mid-graph. And then right as the beat is hitting and everything is in motion, we are just gonna opacity fade out everything. That means all the checks and all the sneakers. So I'm just gonna fade out one of these layers so I can copy and paste it into the rest. Goes from 100 to 0, and then I'm just gonna paste that on everything underneath it. And usually for my intro, I would add some lens flare at the end, which is kind of just like a light that swoops across the screen. But because this is a Finish My Edit competition, I don't want to impede on your ability to finish the edit, so I'm just gonna leave this part plain. All right, guys, and here is the completed intro. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new in this video. I will have this intro available to download in the description. And if you want to participate in this Finish My Edit contest, you can post your edit on Instagram or TikTok under the hashtag laurensummerfme. I'll be looking through all of your submission throughout the next week, and the winner will be announced soon on my TikTok, Instagram, and one of my future YouTube videos. All right, guys, I look forward to seeing your edits. I hope you have a great day or night wherever you are, and bye!